So I've always had this weird, deep-rooted passion and obsession with architecture. It's something that totally mesmerizes me. I could sit in St. Patrick's Cathedral for hours, just staring at the ceiling and the shapes in the stone, the sacred geometry in the windows. There's a divinity to Gothic architecture, even amongst the modern reinterpretations of it, that just can't be described with words or even pictures, in my opinion. And that feeling that I get when I go to cathedrals is something that extends beyond my favorite genre of architecture, but it goes out to most historical monuments and statues and buildings that I'm around. I always go up and I'll feel the stone or brick and think about the meaning of the object, the history behind it, all of the people who died to create it, and the people who dedicated their lives to designing it. It's awe-inspiring stuff. I mean, when I was in Dresden, Germany, I spent an entire night from dusk till dawn, laying on cobblestone in the streets, listening to classical music, and just looking up at the buildings and the statues. And I may sound like a total weirdo for that, but you know, the more and more I talk to people, the more I realize that I think a lot of people do hold that sentiment deep down. They understand that this is a connection to previous generations, a link in time to something that we hope not to forget, and that these monuments and structures were put up as a promise to not forget, to ensure that we look back at the past and remember those who built the future, for better or for worse, because to forget the mistakes or successes of our ancestors is to not learn from them and improve on them in the future. And I'd have to say that appreciation not just for the beauty that was built to last for all time, but for the history behind some of these monuments is fast disappearing in this modern world, to the point where people are perfectly apathetic with the destruction of their history, with no protest, no anger, and not even a feeling of loss, just apathy. Our history in the West isn't wiped from the earth with the condemnation and anger that ISIS receives when they destroy historical monuments, but with utter indifference. The next day, your monuments and churches will be gone in your city, replaced with an apartment complex or with a McDonald's, and people won't give a single damn. They will walk down that street the next day with a Starbucks in hand, whistling, Snapchatting, not even remembering the history that was on that land. And people may wonder how I can say that with such confidence. And I can say that with such confidence because it is happening right this second. Early this morning, while it was dark, government workers dressed in all black, wearing masks and tactical vests, took down the New Orleans Battle of Liberty Place monument. They just cut it down. And not just that, they had police snipers positioned on rooftops to ensure the deed was done. I can hardly even watch the video of this because it infuriates me so much. There was a small protest, thank God, and bless those people who still care about their history and culture, but unfortunately there was little they could do. And not only that, this is just the beginning of a purging of the history that is being planned by the US government. The Jefferson Davis statue and Robert E. Lee statue and a few others are scheduled to be taken down next in this area. And I'm not talking about in a month or a year from now. No, I'm getting word from locals that this is likely going to happen tonight or tomorrow. And I don't even know what to say at this point. I'd like to think that I would go and I would chain myself to one of these buildings or statues if I could get there in time. But these criminals have freaking snipers ensuring the destruction of America's history and monuments. I don't care if these monuments are connected to the South. All history is filled with blood, death, hatred, and destruction, as well as beauty, hope, kindness, and compassion. There's hardly ever a story that is just one side good or bad entirely. And if we go about erasing the history that we hate, we will quickly find ourselves in a world isolated from our ancestors and from all history in general, and more importantly from a remembrance of their mistakes and successes that we can learn from. And that is not a world I want to live in. A world where our history is slowly and cunningly disappeared from the record for the sake of a momentary feeling of moral superiority amongst our politicians, or for the sake of appeasement of radical groups like Black Lives Matter. I don't know what I can tell you guys to do at this point. I guess contact your local politicians, flood their phones and emails right now, show up at the statues and hold signs, spread the word. Just try not to forget our history and try to not let our governments force us to. Let our history and its beauties and failures endure throughout time.